So the messenger is here.
Friends, I'm so happy to be here with you today. I've been looking forward to coming since, well, I don't know when it was on the schedule, but it's been a while. So it's been looking forward to being here with you, and I am really delighted to see all of you. This is a wonderful crowd. You preach to this many people every week?
Not quite.
Not quite. Almost.
If the phrases would come more often.
There's nothing like evangelism today, is there? I was telling my wife last night, I had a dream the other day. You know how you have those dreams just before you wake up? And in the dream, I heard somebody just talking, and I was getting so annoyed in that dream. And the next scene, it said, I wish that guy would shut up. You know, just talk. And then the very next thing, I realized who the guy was. And you know what? It was me. So it seems like everywhere that I go these days, there's something to say. But I'm thankful today that we have someone to talk about, and that's the Lord Jesus Christ, and that's the good news and the good word that I want to bring to you today. I want to thank you for your faithful service to the OIMC conference. You're our lead church, folks. So I think that you run in attendance more than anybody else. I'm not quite sure about that, but I'll bet you that's pretty close. You're our leader in terms of financial contributions to the conference. And once again this year, OIMC is the only conference in the jurisdiction that paid all of its apportionments at 100%. So I want to thank you for your role in that and making that happen. So thank you, church, and it's great to be with each of you today. Today I want to pick up I'm actually going to jump ahead to a little bit different text this morning, but I want to pick up the theme out of Isaiah 40 that was read. Those who wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. So if we wait upon God, our strength will be renewed even when things look like there's trouble ahead. And I want to pick up the Gospel of Mark just in the 4th chapter, actually, and pick up that story. Jesus had been healing. We heard that text read. He had been teaching. He had had one of those long days. And if Jesus were like me, he'd probably be saying, I wish that I could just get somewhere and get some rest. And so he told the disciples, let's go to the other side of the lake. And they get into the boat, and the disciples were all fishermen. And so if you're a fisherman, you know how to do two things well. One is to sail a boat, and two is to increase the size of fish that you caught in the story that you tell. But anyway, they're on number one. The disciples, they've heard all this stuff Jesus has taught. They've seen the healing. They wonder, who is this that can do all of these things? And they're just watching, and they're learning. And they're wishing that they could do something. They don't know what to do. But here Jesus says, let's get into this boat and go to the other side. And so if you're a fisherman and you think it's time to get in the boat, the fishermen think, here is something that I am good at, and we're going to show Jesus just how a boat should be sailed. And so they all get into the boat. They start to the other side. And the text says to us that Jesus went to the back of the boat and he laid his head down on a pillow and he went to sleep. So Jesus was not necessarily impressed with how good a job the fishermen were doing in sailing that boat. He was tired and he was bored. And so he took a nap. Now, I don't want to invite any of you to do the same thing here today. But Jesus needed the rest. The disciples thought they knew everything they needed to know. They thought they didn't need him because they knew how to sail. They don't need Jesus to show them how to sail. And then all of a sudden, a storm hits. That storm is like chaos. And the storm comes and it blows over that lake and the wind raises up. The wind speed goes higher. The waves are getting rougher. They're getting higher. The water's getting in the boat. The boat is starting to fill up with water. And the disciples are doing everything they know how to do to sail that boat. Have you ever been there? Where life goes along, we don't really need Jesus, so Lord, go rest in the back of the boat. We can take care of this. We don't really need you today, Lord. So you go take a nap, and if we need you, we'll call you, but we don't expect to call you, so sleep well. And chaos hits our lives, just like the wind hit that lake. And the waves start going bigger, and the wind starts blowing harder, and the water's getting in the boat. And the text says that the water was getting in the boat so much that they were beginning to sink. And you know, if I were them, I would have my bucket bailing water just as fast as I could to keep from sinking. And so the disciples are doing everything they can, everything they know to get that water out of the boat, but it's a losing battle. They're starting to sink, and one of them looks around, and what is Jesus doing? He is asleep on the back of the boat. Sometimes when chaos strikes us, it feels like Jesus just sleeps through it. Lord, we need you. Where are you? Sleeping? And the disciples look back there, you know, they're all covered head to toe with water. I wonder how Jesus slept with water all over him. Somebody looks back and they say, Master, don't you care that we're about to die here? And for me, I'd say, Lord, where is your bucket? Get a bucket, Jesus, and start bailing. Because that's my best solution to that problem. You know, one more hand, Lord, if you'll just be one more hand and do what we tell you to do, then we'll be out of this mess. But Jesus didn't get a bucket at all. Instead, he said to the wind, be still. And to the waves, be still. And a sudden calm came all across that lake. That's what happens in our lives when we ask Jesus to help us and we say, Lord, we need you. We're about to die. And we drop off that line and get a bucket. Instead, we say, Lord, here I am. Help me. Help me. You know what I need. Help me. And so there's calm. And the text tells us that the disciples were afraid, and Jesus said to them, why were you afraid? Don't you have any faith? Now this story at the end of Mark 4 gives us a pattern that's followed in 3 more stories in Mark 5. So we're going to walk through a whole chapter and a third today, and we're still going to get out in time for lunch. So don't worry. We'll get there. In the 5th chapter, they get to the other side. Remember what happened in the boat. There was chaos. Then there is calm. And then there's healing. So that's the pattern that we're going to look for in each of these stories. Chaos, calm, and healing. They get out of the boat on the other side, and immediately somebody comes running up toward Jesus. And this man is one who is troubled. Troubled with many demons. He lived in the cemetery. And cemeteries that in that day and time were caves. So he lived in the caves where bodies were buried. His mind was not right. He ran around without any clothes on. They tried to chain him, and he broke the chains. And it took a whole group of people to try to subdue him. And even with a whole group of people, they couldn't hold him down. He was walking chaos. Do any of us know folks in our families, or maybe among our friends, that we think of and say they are walking chaos? Walking chaos cuts at the depth of our hearts, because many times for us they are loved ones that have somehow found a wrong path for some reason. This text is specific, but I'm speaking a little more generally about walking chaos. That there are people that we love who hurt us over and over and over and over again because they can't help it. And we try to subdue them. We try to chain them, if you will. We try to dress them, if you will. And nothing works. That is as big a chaos as it is the disciples being on the boat and the storm coming up. That storm was a literal storm, and this was a literal situation of an individual that had broken his life and broken his family. Through no fault of his own, but broken nonetheless. I believe Jesus puts this story in here because he knows about family brokenness. And he knows there's a way to bring healing. And this man, this broken man, comes running toward Jesus. He's chaos, running straight at Jesus. When chaos runs at me, I'd just as soon run the other way, wouldn't you? But Jesus stands his ground. Jesus will stand his ground against the chaos we face. Jesus will give us the strength to stand our ground against the chaos that might be inflicting us or surrounding us or attacking us or tearing us up. Jesus is there. And in this case, this man whose name was Legion, because he had a legion of unclean spirits inside of him, running to Jesus, and he said, Holy One, what have you got to do with us? You're coming here to destroy us. And Jesus told that unclean spirit, come out of the man. And the unclean spirit tried to make a bargain. You know, chaos always tries to make a bargain. And the chaos in this man said, here's a herd of swine over here, a bunch of pigs over here. Let us go into those pigs instead of being destroyed. So Jesus sent the devils into the pigs. And the pigs ran off in the water and drowned. Now, I noticed y'all had a hog calling back here. What were you calling? And then you know what was invented when the devils went in the pigs? Deviled ham. that what you're having for lunch? Deviled ham? How about deviled eggs? You know, pigs don't lay eggs, but you know, that might be there. And you know what happened when Jesus faced the chaos in this man's life? The text says to us that they saw this man, other people had come, and they saw this very man, it says, who had been filled with many demons, sitting there fully dressed and completely sane, and they were filled with awe. Awe is like amazement. They were amazed. Now the first story ended with the disciples being filled with fear. This story ends with people being filled with awe. Fear and awe are two emotions we feel on our spiritual journeys together. Sometimes when things look really, really bad, we are filled with fear. And at other times when God answers our prayers, we are filled with awe. So this theme continues through the text. There are two more stories that I want to share with you on this. They cross back to the other side. I'll bet you those disciples didn't give Jesus a pillow on the way back, don't you? They knew they needed him. They said, no, you stay awake. Help us. We need you. So they get to the other side, and there was a leader of the synagogue whose name was Jairus. And Jairus comes running up to Jesus, and he says that he has a daughter, we learn later, a 12-year-old daughter, who is sick and at the point of death. If you know, you've experienced the death of someone you know how we feel inside ourselves. It's like chaos inside, isn't it? We don't want to let them go, and yet sometimes people are so sick we won't have them stay like that. But it's turmoil in our hearts to lose somebody. It's chaos in our hearts to lose somebody. And Jairus was experiencing chaos in his home and in his heart because his daughter was back at home dying. So they start toward Jairus' house, and the text says, a swarm of people. Now, when I hear about a swarm of something, I think about a swarm of wasps or a swarm of bees. One time I was out on a mission trip, and, I don't like rattlesnakes. And I was clearing a field of some big old weeds. Some of them were 6 feet, 6 inches. They were this tall, So I was chopping these weeds down at the bottom of down at the root near the ground. And I was watching for rattlesnakes because the guy who coordinated the mission trip said, watch out for rattlesnakes. It's their season to be out. And I'm thinking, oh great. So I don't like snakes. So I was watching for rattlesnakes, and I had my bushwhacker out, and it was electric. Snakes can hear. They weren't going to be anywhere near that bushwhacker, but I was watching for them anyway because I was going to whack them. So anyway, I was so busy watching for snakes, and one time I came along and I whacked a weed, and then all of a sudden I felt a snake come up and bite my elbow. And I thought, I didn't think rattlesnakes could jump 4 feet off the ground and bite your elbow. Sure enough, instead of fighting a rattlesnake, I got into a wasp nest. And those wasps were swarming all around me. So I promptly shut off my weed eater and went to the store and got some wasp killer, and I fixed them. That was really right. But the crowd was swarming around Jesus. Just like those wasps. And by the way, one of them stung me. It wasn't a two-fang I also got bit by a fire and I didn't see one rattlesnake on that whole tree. But I saw some other stuff that I didn't like very much. So anyway, the crowd is swarming. They're swarming just like that water was swarming. They were swarming just like that legion was swarming. It was chaos. And Jesus was walking right through the middle of chaos, going to Jairus' house to heal this little girl. And while he was going, there was a woman in the crowd who said, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, then I'm going to be healed. So in the middle of chaos, she is trying to make her way toward Jesus. And you know how crowds are. They kind of push against you and keep you from actually wanting to go where you think you want to go sometimes. That's the way the world is a little bit. It pushes us in directions we don't want to go. She'd get close and the crowd would push her away and shift a little bit, you know. And finally she was able to touch Jesus. And the power of God went from Jesus and through this woman and brought her healing. Yeah. She had been sick for 12 years. Jairus' daughter was 12 years old. So from the year that Jairus' daughter had been born, this woman had been sick. And on the same day, both of them needed Jesus at the same time. And this woman had touched Jesus' garment and had been healed. She was immediately healed. And Jesus turns around in the middle of that swarm of wasps of people. You know, they're all around and he says, who touched me? And the disciples said, you are crazy. What do you mean, who touched me? In the middle of this crowd of people are touching you, they're pushing you, they're all this stuff, and nobody knew what had happened. But this woman had the courage to come forward. You know, her chaos stopped when she touched the robe of Jesus. And that's when her healing came. And she stepped up and told the whole truth. That she'd been sick for 12 years. She'd tried everything. She was incurable. She was out of money. She had no other specialist to go to. She had no hope left in the middle of her chaos except the hope to touch the robe of Jesus. But that was enough. And Jesus looked at the woman and he said, daughter. He didn't call her woman. He said, daughter, your faith has made you well. Now Jairus is standing there. And you know what Jairus is thinking? Hurry up, Lord. My daughter's dying. And you're taking the time to listen to this story of this woman. And I need you in my house. Where are you, Lord? Let's go. But just as the story was ending, the text tells us that messengers come up from Jairus' house. And they say to him the words that he dreaded to hear. Your daughter is dead. Jesus had just called this woman daughter. Jairus had heard she had been sick from the very time His little girl had been born. His daughter had been born. 12 years. And for her, she's well, but for me, my child is lost. Why didn't you help me, Lord? Have you ever felt that way? Why haven't you helped me, Lord? And the messengers come and they say, your daughter's dead. Why bother the teacher anymore? Why bother? Why bother? Why bother carrying on the work of Christ when not everybody's healed? Why bother when there are still people who are poor? Why bother when there are people who have prayers seemingly unanswered? Why bother when chaos is all around us? Why bother? The reason to bother is because Jesus is the Lord of life and is victorious over the grave. Jesus is risen.